Is Baker Mayfield finally going to get the respect and recognition that he's earned? That and more on today's episode of Locked On Bucs.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into this episode of Locked On Bucs, your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listener view every day. Don't forget you can subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, you can follow along on Twitter. I am James Yarcho at JYarcho_Bucs, credentialed member of the media covering your Tampa Bay Buccaneers, here with you every Monday through Friday along with the everydayers. And for that, I want to share my appreciation for your continued support of the show. One of the ways you can support the show is become a Locked On Bucs insider. You're going to get news, rumors, updates, general thoughts, one-on-one conversations with me via text message. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes to become an insider today. We open up the mailbag because you guys came through with tons of great questions. We are going to talk about position groups to be excited about, Benjamin Morrison's status, some focus on the offense, but we're going to start things off with this question that came in from insider Ricky. And Ricky says, James, talk to me. Am I crazy? Is my Bucs bias showing? As good of a year as Baker had last year, I believe he could be better this year. If healthy, I believe Baker has an MVP type season this year. He put up incredible numbers last year, missing Mike and Chris, and the defense being disappointing. So, crazy or not crazy, Baker in the MVP conversation at the end of the season? Great question, Ricky, and the answer is slightly complicated. So, Baker definitely had MVP caliber numbers last season. He was third in yards, third in completion percentage, second in touchdowns, third in yards per game, fifth in yards per completion, fourth in passer rating. He was absolutely outstanding. He was a top 5 quarterback across the board. Here's where the problem comes in. And it's a Baker problem and it's a Bucs problem. So first, the turnovers. Baker was tied with Kirk Cousins for the most interceptions in the league. The MVP of the NFL is not going to be the one who's also turning the ball over more than any other quarterback. That, first and foremost, is the main problem. That is the Baker problem. The second problem is that you have to look to the MVP frontrunners of last season. Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, right? Those were the guys. So as much as MVP has become a quarterback-only award, either right or wrong, that's what it is, it's also indirectly a team award. So the Ravens started off losing to the Chiefs and the Raiders last year before beating Dallas on the road. Then they beat the Bills. Then they beat the Bengals on the road. They beat the Commanders. They beat the Bucs on the road. They lost to Cleveland. Then they went back-to-back against the Broncos and the Bengals. They lost to Pittsburgh. Then they beat the Chargers in LA. They lose to the Eagles. Then they win 4 straight against the Giants, Steelers, Texans, and Browns to end the season. The Bills, on the flip side, they opened up with 3 straight wins. Then they lose back-to-back road games against the Ravens and Texans. Then they rattle off 7 straight wins. They lose to the Rams, then 3 more wins in a row, and then they just tanked the final week because they couldn't improve their seeding. They put all their backups in. They didn't care anymore. These teams were beating up playoff caliber teams all season long, and they were leading the way in their division essentially from the jump. The Bucs as a team were disappointing. And I say that knowing that they did win their division again. They did make the postseason, for the 5th straight year. But they were relatively disappointing from the standpoint of they should have been better than they were. And not all of that was their fault. They couldn't have predicted the losses of Evans and Godwin. They couldn't have predicted all the injuries on the defensive side of the ball. But they lost 4 straight games with 3 of them at home, injury or no injury. And yeah, they started hot. They beat the Lions. They beat the Eagles. But then they lost twice to Atlanta while losing to Baltimore, Kansas City, Denver, and San Fran in a stretch where they went 2-6 from weeks 3 through 10. And yes, they went on a run and won 6 of their last 7. But again, injuries or no injuries, the meat of their schedule, they didn't rise to the occasion and beat the higher level teams. Instead, they beat up on the bad teams after the bye week. Yes, Baker Mayfield was absolutely fantastic last season, and he should have been mentioned in some of these MVP conversations and debates. Joe Burrow was incredible for the Bengals and almost got them into the postseason, but his team was trash. So he didn't get the buzz that he should have had the Bengals been in the hunt for the playoffs all season. Even then, he still got some MVP buzz for as bad as the Bengals as a team were because his season was just that incredible. Yes, Baker should be even better this year than he was last year. The offensive line is going to be better now that Barton has a year under his belt. Another season with those guys all together on the offensive line is going to help, and it's going to make them that much better. Yes, he has Amika Ibuka and Tez Johnson joining the mix as pass catchers and weapons, and that's going to take the sting out of any delay in Godwin being 100%. Yes, Bucky being the RB1 right out of the gate is going to make the offense that much more dangerous. But if the defense isn't getting stops and the Bucs aren't stringing together multiple wins while only losing one game at a time, it's not going to matter. If they aren't beating teams like the Texans, the Eagles, the Niners, the Lions early in the season, if they aren't going to Buffalo and getting an upset win with Baker playing flawlessly, if they aren't winning in prime time, it's not going to matter if Baker has over 4,500 yards and 40 touchdowns again. The MVP is going to be the quarterback of the best team in the league. So if Baker is going to have a legit shot at winning it, he has to put together the same kind of season or better that he had last year, minus the interceptions. And then the team has to win more games. They have to win more games against better teams. They have to win when they're under the lights of prime time, and they have to win with Baker carrying the load and being that guy for the team. And honestly, the fact that Tom Brady didn't win MVP in 2020 or 2021 should tell you that a Bucs player will probably never win MVP. Brady for sure deserved it in 2021 over Aaron Rodgers, just statistically speaking, but you could easily make the case that Brady was more valuable to the Bucs than Rodgers was to the Packers in 2020. Not to mention, Brady won both of their head-to-head matchups in 2020, but I digress. MVP was supposed to be the most valuable player, not who is the quarterback of the best team. And you can say what you want about who deserves MVP each year and how players like Jonathan Taylor and Christian McCaffrey have been screwed over in recent years. You could argue that Saquon Barkley deserved it over Josh Allen last year, but it's a quarterback award. And that award is going to the player that the NFL wants to be the face of the league. Mahomes, Lamar, Allen, Burrow. They aren't going to give it to Baker regardless of what he does. And I'll sit on this show and I'll scream my head off about how he deserves it. I'll go on the squad and I'll argue with those guys about how he should be talked about and how he is an MVP candidate that's not getting any buzz, but it doesn't matter. Baker isn't the guy that the NFL is going to trot out as the face of the league. Those other guys that I mentioned are more marketable. For whatever reason, they're more marketable. They're going to be in the ads. They're going to draw in more fans. Cincinnati isn't any bigger than Tampa in terms of football market, so we can't talk about small market bias there. It's all about the marketability of the individual. And as great as those Baker Mayfield insurance commercials were when he was living in the stadium in Cleveland, the NFL doesn't look at him as a guy that they can put as the face of the league. So, Ricky, to answer your question, I think Baker can absolutely have an MVP caliber season and put up all the numbers that you need him to. The team has to help him out in the win column to give him a legit chance, but I just don't think that the NFL is going to ever give him that award because they won't get the revenue that they want out of the MVP with him compared to some of these other guys. So as much as that sucks, that's kind of how I feel about it, where we can talk about how Baker was the real MVP of the league, but it was given to Lamar for the third time in 4 years, or it was given to Jalen Hurts, or it was given to Mahomes for the upteenth time, or whatever the case may be. I just don't think that Baker is the draw that the NFL is looking for in their MVP, unless he's just so far ahead of the rest of the pack that they have no choice. I think there's going to be other options that people are going to name as the MVP over Baker. Position group talk. That is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. The Oklahoma City Thunder are headed to the NBA Finals, while the Pacers and Knicks are headed to a Game 6. The Thunder are the heavy favorites to win the championship at minus 750, followed by the Pacers at plus 700, and then the Knicks at plus 1600. SGA, the NBA MVP, the Western Conference Finals MVP, he is the favorite to win the NBA Finals MVP at minus 600, followed by Tyrese Halliburton at plus 900, and then Jalen Brunson at plus 2400. New to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com, place your first $5 bet, and if it wins, you're going to get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thank you again for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every day. For your second listen, check out Locked On NFL Scouting. The NFL draft is over, but the roster moves and news never stop. Host Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino will make you the most informed NFL fan this offseason. Find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. So my insiders really came through with the questions, but I wanted to get some from Twitter. To let you guys know, if you're not an insider, you should be one. But if you're not, you can still participate in these mailbag episodes. I have lots more insider questions coming up on the next show. But let's hear from Ed on Twitter at Mr. Ed315 says, in your estimation, which position groups are worthy or are worth getting warm and fuzzy over, and which ones are going to give us a Jita? So, Ed, I like this a lot, and it plays well into the next Twitter question that I'm going to get to in just a minute. But let's start with the bad here. Let's start with the Ajita. Which position groups are going to agitate us, make us, drink the Pepto-Bismol, take some Alka-Seltzer, settle that stomach down. And I'm going to give you one from each side of the ball for the good and the bad. So I think linebacker is still the one that's going to give a lot of Bucs fans anxiety there on the defensive side of the ball, and whether or not Servassier, Dennis, and Anthony Walker are going to be enough of an upgrade over last season to make a difference. Now, I've talked about those guys a few times. I just talked about them with Evan Klosky, and I have said that I'm cautiously optimistic, and I truly am. But that doesn't mean that the position group doesn't make me nervous. And it even goes beyond whether or not I think Servassier and Walker are better than Britt and Russell. I think they both are. It's going to be great to finally, hopefully, see Servassier Dennis play as a healthy linebacker so we can really see what he's capable of. But that's where my other concern comes in. Health. Levante has missed more games as of late than he has earlier in his career, and you kind of expect that with him getting older. And while you hope that isn't the case this season, you can't rule it out. Dennis has missed a lot of time in his first two seasons. And if those guys go down, if Walker goes down, I think linebacker is probably the most shallow position that the Bucs have on the roster. There is no depth there. You have Deion Jones that can step in and he'll be fine. But if you have multiple linebackers go down the way that we saw the secondary get beat up last season, this team is beyond screwed. They cannot tread water the way that they did with a makeshift secondary strung together with packing tape and prayers. Antonio Greer Jr., John Bullock, an undrafted rookie, Nick Jackson, another undrafted rookie. That's your depth. The entire middle of the defense would be an absolute disaster, and that's going to put more pressure on the rest of the defense. It would create chaos across the middle of the field, and so that's my big concern there. It's not that I don't think Servassier or Anthony Walker can step up and play to the level that the Bucs need them to in order to improve what the defense was last year. It's not that I think that Levante is going to have a drop-off or become 2 steps slower than he was last year. It's the injuries scare me. If there are injuries, I am petrified. at what this linebacking group can do. Offensively, the one that concerns me is center. I know that's not really a group like the linebackers are, but I can't lie. This offense is so stacked that I just have a hard time finding a weakness. And the reason that I pick center is strictly depth-based. Barton's backup is undrafted rookie Jake Majors as of right now. So I would have very serious concerns if Barton missed any time this season. With Robert Hainsey gone, that really hurt the depth in the middle of the line. And I don't blame Hainsey for leaving. He's a starting caliber center. He wasn't going to take a backup role when he had a starting opportunity elsewhere. So just everyone pray that Barton not only takes a big step forward in his growth, but that he also gets through the entire season unscathed. As for the warm and fuzzies, let's talk about some happy things. Happy thoughts, everyone. It's almost June. We are Bucs. You guys are Bucs fans wanting happy thoughts. Let's stick with the offensive side of the ball. Let's talk about wide receiver. I love this group. I don't think I could love this group more than I already do. Top to bottom, this is the best receiver room in the league, and it's not particularly close. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Emeka Egbuka, Jalen McMillan, Sterling Shepard, Tez Johnson, Rakim Jarrett, Trey Palmer, Cam Johnson, Ryan Miller, Dennis Houston. Like, this is the kind of depth that you build on your roster in Madden when you turn the salary cap off. It's borderline unfair. And unlike those last two positions that I mentioned, if the injury bug hits here, I'm not nearly as concerned as I was last year. McMillan has shown that he can step up and handle his business. Egbuka is going to be the everything guy that can line up anywhere against anyone and still be effective. Tez is the wild card that you just get the ball in his hands and let him go to work and let him do his thing. We've seen growth from Jarrett and Johnson. So they're going to continue to, take steps forward and become even better. This room is so loaded that there's talk about cutting Shepard and trading Trey Palmer. I'll talk more about that trade speculation on the next show, but it is an absolute spoil of riches. So when the ball is in the air this season, it's headed to a player that's going to be able to make the most of it, no matter who that is. Before they're even in the frame of the television, the ball's in the air, you're like, yep, Bucs are about to do something. I absolutely love that. As for the defense, I got to go with the secondary. It goes from a weakness to a strength real quick. For the sake of this, though, I'm going to talk just about the corners, which seemed to be a problem last year. So you have Jamel Dean and Zion McCollum already. McCollum, he had his breakout season last year. I expect him to get even better in 2025. Number one, it's a contract year. Number two, we've seen exponential growth from Zion McCollum each and every year of his career so far. I expect that to continue because that's the kind of player that he is. That's the kind of worker that he is. That's the dedication that he has. I expect another step forward from him. Excuse me. Dean, he's hit and miss. Sometimes he looks like a Pro Bowler. Sometimes he looks like burnt toast. Sometimes he's in street clothes. But that said, when he's on his game, he's a great weapon for this defense. But now you add in Benjamin Morrison and Jacob Parrish, two ball hawks with incredible skill levels that can come in and immediately start if you need them to. Morrison is an absolute tactician that has never met a receiver that he could not cover and get the better of. See his game against Marvin Harrison Jr. in 2023. Shut him down. The 33rd team put out a graphic of Marvin Harrison Jr.'s toughest matchups against corners this season. Bucs weren't even listed. I bookmarked it. We're going to revisit that if Benjamin Morrison Jr. is a starting corner that week against the Arizona Cardinals. Parrish, he's that junkyard dog that is just going to rip you to shreds the moment he has the chance. Then you bring back Bryce Hall for reliable depth. You signed Kendall Vildor in the offseason to give you special teams help as well as depth. You have Tyke Smith and Christian Izien that can play safety or corner, whatever you need them to do. You have Tyreek Funderburk that showed flashes as an undrafted rookie last season after he was baptized by fire by being thrown into the deep end because of injuries. Josh Hayes is another one that has shown some moxie out there on defense when called upon, in addition to being an absolute stud on special teams. So I absolutely love this group all the way around. And that leads us to another Twitter question from what about this? Who asked, will Morrison take over as cornerback 2? Yes, I absolutely believe that he does. At some point this season, Benjamin Morrison will be a starting corner. Now, will that be because of Dean's performance? I'm not sure. But I think if Dean goes down to injury at some point this season, which we all kind of assume that he's going to because it happens every year, then it might be him losing his job because of injury. And I know it's kind of like the unwritten rule that you don't lose your job because of injury, but it's happened plenty of times. I mean, Tom Brady, the greatest quarterback of all time, got his job because of injury. More recently on this team alone, Leonard Fournette became the starting running back on the Bucs because of injury. You go back to that 2020 season, Rojo was the guy. Leonard Fournette was the backup. Rojo misses a week. Lenny goes off, and from there, it was over. They rode the hot hand. Leonard Fournette stayed the starter through the playoffs. He was the starter the next season. So it does happen. And I think if that door gets opened and Morrison gets enough reps in games, he's going to take that job away during his rookie season. If not, then there's still going to be plenty of opportunities for him to see the field, even with Dean and Zion out there. And that makes the secondary that much more dangerous for the Buccaneers. One more mailbag question from an insider talking about the offense that is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs. Wrapping things up here on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, an insider, Trucker Brian, wrote in and asked, "Hola, Bucs fans. James, do you think with the offense and the continuity staying the same, it's a reasonable expectation that we could have the number one offense in all categories this season? Also, who do you think leads our team in third down receptions, resulting in a first down?" All right, so let's start with the first part here. And yes, I do firmly believe that the Bucs have an offense that can lead the league in passing, rushing, and scoring. They have, or they weren't that far off last year. They were honestly the closest of any team at being able to pull it off. No other team was top four in all three of those categories last year, just the Bucs. So that's definitely within the realm of possibility, but I'm going to let you down here, Brian, and I'm going to tell you that it's not going to happen. Here's kind of my best case scenario as far as this question is concerned. I think the Bucs can legitimately and realistically lead the league in 2 out of the 3. I think passing offense and scoring offense, that's where the Bucs have a real shot at being the number one team in the NFL. I don't think they have the horses to lead the league in rushing. I love Bucky. You love Bucky. I love Rashad. You love Rashad. But the Bucs running backs are not the best running back group in the league. I'm sorry, they're just not. Detroit's is better. Philadelphia has the best running back in the league. Baltimore has a great running back room led by the other best running back in the league. I mean, honestly, the Falcons might have the best group of running backs in the division. So I don't think that this running back group in Tampa could withstand the injuries that the same way that some of the other teams in the NFL could. They have Bucky, Rashad, and Sean Tucker. That's really it. And that's why I was so high on them taking a running back in the draft to round out this group. One injury and it derails a lot for the offense. It doesn't matter if it's Bucky or Rashad. If one of those two guys goes down, it really affects everything that the offense can do. So, I mean, you have DJ Williams on the roster, and that's fine, I guess. They have undrafted rookie Josh Williams, but losing either Bucky or Rashad for any extended period of time really hurts the ability of the run game to not only be consistent enough to be a real threat, but it also affects the passing game in their ability to have dynamic playmakers out of the backfield as pass catching backs, or in Rashad's case, one of the best blitz pickup running backs in the NFL. And if the running game isn't a threat, it hurts the passing game. Now, obviously, if Baker goes down, then that kills the offense as well. But that's true most teams with their quarterbacks. So that's not what I'm focused on here. If a receiver on this team goes down, they have the depth to withstand it. If Cade Otton goes down, they have Payne Durham. They have Devin Kolb. Those guys showed last year that they can step up and the offense is still going to cook. At running back, one of those top two guys going down is a problem. So while I would love for the Bucs to be number one across the board in offense, and I think it would help in any MVP case for Baker, going back to what we talked about at the top of the show, I just don't see it happening this year. As far as your second question is concerned, which player do I think leads the team in third down receptions that result in a first down this season? I'm sticking with Godwin. Godwin is going to play enough and have ample enough opportunity to be the third down machine again this season, but do not be surprised if the number 2 player on that list for the Bucs this year is Emeka Egbuka. Egbuka made a living in Columbus by making those tough catches on third downs and extending drives. That's one of the reasons he's a Buccaneer now. Otten was solid for the Bucs on third downs after Godwin went down. Shep had his up and down moments, but he had some really big third down catches. Evans is always going to be a third down threat. McMillan stepped up and he made some tough third down receptions late in the season, but Egbuka is going to terrorize some of these defenses on third downs. You basically get 2 Chris Godwins on the field for third downs now. The Bucs may never punt again with that kind of setup. So, Egbuka is definitely, he's going to make his money as a rookie in those third down situations. And the more pressure he can take off of Chris Godwin in those situations, the more Godwin is going to flourish down the stretch, because now teams are like, okay, we know we got to take care of Mike Evans. Now we got to worry about this Egbuka dude who has been killing it on third downs. By the way, they still have Chris Godwin. By the way, they still have Jalen McMillan on the outside over there. So it is, again, it's a spoil of riches for Baker Mayfield, but Egbuka's play style. And this is something that I'm going to get into coming up next month. I'm going to start doing my draft pick film breakdowns, during this slower period where might do one guy a week, where I'm going to go through and I'm going to look at, their highest graded game by PFF, their lowest graded game by PFF, and then another one just kind of somewhere in the middle, and see what I like from them, what I don't like from them, what they need to work on, in my opinion. But this is something that has always popped off the screen from Egbuka, and you guys know me and my feelings on Ohio State, but I hated that guy. I hated that dude when I was watching, Ohio State games, because I absolutely knew if there was a tough catch that had to be made, if there was a big third down that had to be converted to keep a play alive and keep Ohio State in a game, or if it was going to be a 2-minute drill to get down there for a game-winning score, I knew Egbuka was going to make plays. It happened every single time. It could be 3rd and 17, and Egbuka was going to be the one to get that ball. And so that's one of the best things I think we're going to see out of this offense. And it's going to be a while before we actually see it come to fruition for the Bucs, because it's not going to be until week 1 or week 2 or week 3 when we start to see these situations arise. But if you can line up Evans and McMillan on the outsides, and then you put Egbuka and Godwin on the insides, one of those 2 dudes is getting a mismatch. One of those 2 dudes is going to end up being covered by a linebacker, so they're going to be open. And it's going to turn into critical third down conversions, and it's going to turn into explosive plays. So I love everything about the way this receiver room is set up. I love how it's going to be able to help an already electric offense. I love how it actually kind of takes a little bit of pressure off of Josh Grizzard as a first-time play caller, because he does have all these weapons. He doesn't need to be cute. He doesn't need to be eccentric. He can be simple, and the Bucs are still going to wind up with a mismatch somewhere on the field on any given down. Guys, thank you so much for coming through with the mailbag questions. I'm going to try my absolute best to drop another mailbag episode tomorrow, and then we're probably still going to have enough questions for another 1 or 2 episodes. But starting next month in June, we will be going down to 3 shows a week. Now, that doesn't mean I'm only going to give you 3 shows a week. Depending on what's going on, what's happening, if you guys come through on these mailbags again, going through these film studies and bringing you breakdowns there, we may still get 4 or 5 episodes a week, but we are heading into the slower time for the NFL. So the show is going to be at least 3 days a week, maybe more, but I will bring you at least 3 episodes a week for the month of June. But that is going to do it for this episode. Please check out everything going on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at @Yarcho_Bucs. We're on TikTok now. If you are a person that is on TikTok, follow at Locked On Bucs over there. Let's start to grow that TikTok following and see if we can get some new people introduced to the show. That would be super, super awesome of all of you. Make sure that you are subscribed on YouTube with those notifications turned on so you know every time I drop a show, as well as wherever you get your podcast. Become a Locked On Bucs insider. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes. If you want to support the show but don't want to be an insider, just leave a 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice. It does help other Bucs fans find the program. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. Want to thank you so much for joining me right here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.